program, the Sports Parliament, Satish, all the way from Wales. Satish, good to see you again.
Good to see you all, and glad to be with you again.
That's very good. Our last guest, or our last personality here today is SAN, Tunde Ogala. You are most welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, acting speaker or deputy speaker, if you permit me. Good evening, Nigerians. Good evening, all our watchers all over the world. It's indeed my pleasure to be here.
There it is. We are set to go for a very, very important issue to be discussed on the Parliament today. But we shall first of all take a break. But before we go on this break, of course, it is now common knowledge that someone that we all celebrated here when he marked his 80th birthday, our own mentor in NTA sports, and indeed the mentor of so many in the Nigerian sporting fraternity, Fabio Lanipegun, 4 days after we celebrated his 80th birthday, joined his ancestors. And what more can we say? On some of our programs on the NTA, a lot of testimony was given on who he really was. He has remained a colossus. He will remain a colossus, and our hearts go out to the family of the late Fabio Lanipegun, and of course, those of us that were his proteges who worked under him. It is a heavy loss to the sports reporting fraternity, and we pray that the Lord Almighty will be with the family and grant him eternal rest.
Amen.
Having said that,
Amen.
Having said that, we will now go on a short break, and then when we come back, we will discuss an issue that is more topical for the issues it is raising than actually for the reason that it is happening. Stay with us.
And there's the start. And promises to Shero. Winds up that right hand.
Archbishop of basketball, goal! He hung on that net like a stalk up a tree.
NTA Sports 24 brings you all sports, all time and all day. Tune in to watch NTA Sports 24 on Star Times Channel 270, StarSat on Channel 434 and Free TV on Channel 731. NTA Sports 24, where sports thrive.
Politics and sports, or sports diplomacy, describes the use of sport as a means to influence diplomatic, social and political relations. Sport diplomacy may descend cultural differences and bring people together. The use of sports and politics has had both positive and negative implications over history. Respect for human rights and peaceful relations between nations form the foundation of international sport. Presently, the conflict between Russia and Ukraine is understandably expected to have an impact on sports. It is not looking bright at the moment.
Conflict anywhere in the world affects sports, no matter how little. Even in this case, conflict has affected sports in a very big way. As I speak to you now, 2 Ukrainian footballers are reported to have been killed in this conflict. Vitaly Sapilo, a 21-year-old footballer, and of course, Dmitry Martinenko, a 25-year-old footballer playing with FC Gostomel. Those 2 players have been reported killed, either in the war front or maybe in their homes. That's an effect. Also, Russian sportsmen and women cannot compete right now under the flag of their nation because of this conflict. Russian and Belarusian sportsmen and women, anywhere they are, tennis, football, cricket, or whatever, they cannot compete. They're going to compete like people who do not have a country. And you can understand how that will make you feel if you're a sportsman and you did not take part in the decision making to go into the conflict. Also, as we speak, Russia has been thrown out of the 2022 World Cup, and the playoff game they have against Poland will no longer hold.
Recently, Chelsea are the best team in the world, and the team is now going on sale. From the owner, Abramovich, who happens to be a Russian, to who we don't know, and now we don't know how the person who is going to buy is going to handle the team. Having said that, it has really affected even Nigerian players, who, of course, Victor Moses, ex-Nigeria, ex-Super Eagle, has been affected as well. Is among 109 players that FIFA has given the opportunity to end their contract, and as games and matches are going on, leagues are going around the world, they have the opportunity to join any team who need their services.
The ensuing situation has prompted ministers of sport or their equivalent from 37 countries of the world to make a statement on Russia's war on Ukraine and international sport. The statement suffices that Russia and Belarus should not be permitted to host, bid for, or be awarded any international sporting event. Individual athletes selected by Russia and Belarus, administrators and teams representing the Russian or Belarusian state should be banned from competing in other countries, including those representing bodies, cities, or brands that are effectively representing Russia or Belarus, such as major football clubs. And, wherever possible, appropriate actions should be taken to limit sponsorship and other financial support from entities with links to the Russian or Belarusian state. These restrictions are supposed to be in place until cooperation under the fundamental principles of international law has become possible again.
I want to believe that time has come for the world to come to a round table and take a decision that sports should be separated from politics.
For now, the international sports community should continue to show its solidarity with the people of Ukraine, including through supporting the continuation of Ukraine sport where possible. In Abuja, I am Kenan Ima Abodike.
Your mute. Mr. Assistant Speaker, could you unmute yourself, please?
Yes, please. Like I was saying, it is our pleasure now to introduce Onome Obrute, the Maverick. He is here with us now. Onome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Acting Speaker. I would come to Jos soon to collect this your outfit. I really, really love it. Thank you for having me.
My brother, anything for you.
Thank you.
Now, we also need to thank Kene Imabodike for that brilliant report that he gave us, War and Politics. That is the heading of our topic for discussion tonight. Mr. Speaker, just about a fortnight ago, you and a number of other big heads, other intelligent heads, other big names were at the National Institute for Sports to discuss matters similar to this. Maybe there was a premonition that something like this would come. You were trying to discuss sports and war, sports and diplomacy. And now here we are having the practical effects of sports, war on sports. Let us kickstart this discussion by you are giving us your perspective against the background of what is practically happening in Europe now. Russia against Ukraine.
Yes, thank you very much. Sports and diplomacy are twins. They don't look to be likely twins, but they have always been twins. Unfortunately, the world has not, for some time, been able to really locate sport as an integral part of everything else that is happening in life. particularly in the area of conflict resolution, promotion of peace, making friendships, between nations and so on. The world has focused too much on sport as sport, people just running and kicking the ball, and when the events are over, that is it. Whereas we always speak of sport as a unifying tool for people, but we don't use its power to actually unify people beyond the sports field. So the whole idea is to do what Nigeria started in 1976, when led by Tanzania, or created by Tanzania, Nigeria led 27 other African countries to make a big statement. It was because of that step taken by Nigeria in 1976 that South Africa got her independence, that apartheid ended in South Africa, that the black South African became president of South Africa, and so many other things. So sport has that power. And what we are saying is that nations should start to focus on how it can deploy that power to make the world a better place to live in, beyond the medals and the trophies. There's a need for us to focus on sports. Once again, with what is happening between Russia and Ukraine, we are all seeing, what sports can do. Sports has just come in to be part of the sanctions to end the crisis between Russia and Ukraine. But unfortunately, sports has taken sides to say one side is wrong and the other side is right. And so they are using the power of sports to drive, Russia to end the crisis. So it's just a demonstration. It's not who is guilty or who is right that we are talking about now, but the power of sports to recognize it as one of those instruments that we can use to change the world.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You have attempted to address this issue diplomatically and, of course, now practically what is happening between Russia and Ukraine. I guess there is the absence of diplomacy there. That is why probably the war has come in. Satish, this is an international affair, seeing that you are based there in Europe and you are kind of one of the people to be facing this situation directly. Would you be in a position to agree with what Mr. Speaker has stated now, that it looks like sports has taken sides, making one side apparently guilty and another side not guilty, talking about the sporting federations that have descended on one side of the combatants? Satish.
I think it's very difficult to argue against that. It very clearly has been stated that the attack on Ukraine is completely and utterly unacceptable and wrong. And the world community is saying we're not going to tolerate it. The issue is how far sport can actually do anything about it. And at the same time as we're saying that sport is acting against the aggression in Ukraine, it has to look at other issues. For example, Palestine. Why is it looked on as, if you support Palestine and the use of sport to deal with the conflict in Palestine, you don't get the same response. You don't get support for the Palestinian cause. You don't get condemnation of Israeli aggression. And I'm not just talking about Israel. You have aggression all over the world. If we are going to use sport in the way that it is capable of being used as an ambassador for peace and as an ambassador for changing the world, then we have to be consistent about it. We have to look at what has happened in the past, what can we learn from it, what is happening in the present, and also where we want to go in the future. As Segun, the speaker, said, one of the major things of this was the Olympic boycott in 1976. It was, to some extent, the start of the use of sport, at least in African terms, to do something about it. But it doesn't, what he didn't say is, it actually began earlier. There was a very courageous stance taken by CAF when it formed itself in 1957, that it threw South Africa out of the Africa Cup of Nations and also out of CAF itself. That was a very courageous thing to do at that point in time because there were only three countries. It led to a bigger boycott, and eventually it led to sport taking a big stand against apartheid and winning. It is necessary that we pay tribute to the African countries where sport has been used to fight oppression and to help deliver justice. This happened in Zambia in its fight against white supremacy and colonialism, and even more so, it began with the FLN team in Algeria in 1958. One of the things that is very interesting about it is if you look at the coverage at the time, there was widespread condemnation of the Algerian cause internationally. There was a man named Mekloufi, who's one of the greats of the FLN team. He chose to leave France and a secure future that he had. He could have been in the World Cup playing for France in 1958. He chose to stand instead for Algeria, Algerian football and Algeria. After the war was won for Algerian independence, Charles de Gaulle referred to Mekloufi, who'd gone back to France, and said, "You are France." That is the power of football and sport.
Well, certainly I do remember Mekloufi and how much he is held in such high esteem by the Algerian people for that singular act. Let me now tap from the legal mind of the SAN, Babatunde Ogala. Satish did raise the issue that why is it that it does not appear that other international sports federations are taking the same action that has now been taken against Russia, because the Russians have been termed the aggressors. Because in history, it is not only the Russians that have invaded some other countries. Indeed, Satish has mentioned one. There are a lot that can be mentioned. Is this showing us that we kind of have an animal farm kind of situation? Some countries are more equal than others, or some people are more special than others?
Well, thank you, Abdul Rahman. You said it all yourself. Mr. Speaker, well, I won't call him Mr. Speaker for today. The Chief Shegun Degbami, because there's a speaker on the, had given us a good insight. Yes, we know sports has always been a good tool in diplomacy and in politics. But like has been noted, this is the first time sports is being seen to be biased. In the past, what did we have? We've had instances like in Nigeria boycotting. That did not mean the federations. We've had countries boycotting South Africa when they boycotting Olympics. We remember the advances of this world at the 68 Olympics. That did not mean that the federation took sides. But for the first time, the federation has adjudged one side as guilty, and they have gone ahead to start imposing sporting sanctions. Just today, Chelsea is, as it is, by that singular decision of the British authorities of freezing assets, have effectively gone on a mission to kill that club, the current world champion. Now they said that club cannot spend more than £20,000 on his travels, which they say is even barely enough to take it to go and play his next Champions League match against Lille in France next week. So it is quite unfortunate that, contrary to what the sporting federations, or contrary to what sports has always preached, that do not mix war and politics, sports today has been forced to become political. Whichever way we call it, whether it is war, whether you want to say it's politics, what we have today going on between Russia and Ukraine as an invasion, as is war, is a fallout of politics. And look at the careers. You're going to kill football and all sports in Russia. Even in that Russia, is it every Russian that is actually in support of what is going on? You are good. Careers of footballers who currently play in Russia, you are saying they can go and play elsewhere. They can terminate their contract. They can do that. You know, and they can be registered with other clubs. You've gone to other countries. In England, you say you've frozen assets of an Abramovich. And as such, you have also frozen football that is being played in Stamford Bridge. And that is going to happen across board. So it is quite unfortunate that we have now gotten sports to start playing international politics. This is a precedent that has been set. Like has been said by the previous contributors, this has whatever Russia has done today, others have done before. Please note, I am not justifying, and I'm not saying I support what is going on in Russia, but for goodness sake, sports ought to be insulated. We have comfortably set a bad precedent. You have sent Russia out of the World Cup. You have sent Belarus out of the World Cup, European Championship. You are likely going to send the Chelsea out of the Champions League. And you have sent Russian players, tennis players. I mean, it is just too much. These are persons, these are events that have no correlation whatsoever.
Thank you very much.
A sovereign nation is doing to another
I know
one.
that if we leave you, you can go on and on, on and on. But I'm sure the lady amongst us, as well as the other parliamentarians, will have something to say. Let's hear briefly from the lady. What is your take on this issue, Landy?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm with everybody. I think sports can be a great tool for diplomacy, but I think it needs to be consistent. So this that's happening now really is a great example of, I'd say, how not to do it. So I don't speak to the conflict. I speak to the role of sports and the role of diplomacy. So it's not saying that, one person is right, but who are we to judge and sort of sanction everything all at once? And then the country sanctions is different to individual businesses. Is it really that by sanctioning, as we used as a case study, the owner of Chelsea, is that going to put pressure on Putin? Is he going to be able to put pressure on the president of his country to actually do anything different in the conflict? And I'm not sure that's a positive thing. I'm not sure that's going to go the way. So the first thing I thought of when this happened was, one person's terrorist is another person's freedom fighter. There's conflict all over the world. What makes this one different? I remember also there was a furor around Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter. Remember when there was a Premier League match and Burnley bought a huge blimp saying White Lives Matter, saying, oh, don't politicize sport. This is not the forum to talk about Black Lives Matter. So why then does the Premier League logo have Ukraine colors, now with every match? So we have to be consistent. Yes, if you're going to say you're going to support Ukraine with this, the whole Premier League, then you support Black Lives Matter. You support anything against Syria and Assad. You support anything against any invasion in any country, against human rights or supposed human rights abuse in Qatar. So that's where I think it's just a bit unsettling that it seems like there's this whole blitz against one nation. Not saying that I'm speaking for or against any nation, but it's like this is an invasion.
Thank you very much, Landy. That was insightful. Now, Waidi, I'm not sure you have anything different to say, but you certainly have something to say.
Yeah, of course. I have nothing different to say from what the other speakers have said, because I'm seeing sports as an entity which is speak with one voice at all points in time. In recent times, you see, some individual sports have taken actions, whereas there are other sports that have remained silent. And this is not supposed to be the case. Sports are supposed to speak in one voice, and they're supposed to be consistent. What they are doing now, sports should be isolated from all these happenings in the world. It is not right to use sports to influence what is happening in Russia or in Ukraine for now. It seems that we have taken sides. on one side against the other. Who are we? Who are the people in sports to take one to have taken side? It's not supposed to be. So divide and rule tactics they are using is not appropriate. Let's be seen as one, and let's be seen as talking with one voice on all matters affecting sports. It's not fair the way we are using sports to actually interpret or to interplay with the political situations. It's not proper.
Well, when you say we, I'm sure you're referring to the international sports federations that have, pronounced sanctions.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm using it because I see myself as a sports person, and then I want to say anything we do as we sports person doing it. So that's what I mean by we. So sorry to say that as the international sports federations, that's what I mean.
Thank you very much. Well, Onome, I'm going to put you on, a standby mood, so that maybe you may think it over before we go after the break that we're about to go. I want you to think about what role is there going to be for the Court of Arbitration for Sports, because I hear the Russians have actually been trying to approach that court for settlement of some of these issues. Let's try to see what role you think, in practical terms, that court can play. And I think the SAM, Babatunde Ogala, will also likely come in here. But before we do that, please, let's go for this short break.
It's the dawn of a new era on NTA's flagship program, The Sports Parliament, revitalized with lots of varieties, including feedback responses from viewers. Sports Parliament, the weekly sports show that exposes all the intrigues in the Nigerian sports sector and projects an agenda on the way forward for Nigerian sports. On NTA every Thursday at 10:30 p.m., running for 1 whole hour, discussing sports. The parliamentarians are more committed than ever to enlighten the viewers as the Sports Parliament takes it to a whole new level on the floor of the House. Keep a date with the Sports Parliament as motions are moved every Thursday on the floor of the House. Mr. Speaker, with his gavel to harmonize sports resolutions. The House have it.
Thanks for staying with us. Now, Onome, I did make mention of the Court of Arbitration for Sports. We do hear that the Russians have been trying to approach the court so that the sanctions that have been meted out on them by certain sports federations across the globe can be looked at. How effective do you think this will come to be?
All right, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Yes.
All right. I do not agree with what everybody has said. I have a very different opinion. First and foremost, the Court of Arbitration for Sports is made up of human beings, not mannequins. I personally believe that sports is being hijacked. I personally believe that Committee of Friends of Nations are doing what they have agreed via WhatsApp message or WhatsApp group that they belong to ridicule and destroy sports. And I like to say this. The Court of Arbitration for Sports is going to mess things further if we want to put our hopes there. Why? This same Russian president was given the hosting rights of the 2018 World Cup. He's a strong ally to the FIFA president. They are very close friends. There are pictures all over the internet of both of them doing things together. So how come all of a sudden their relationship has gone south? It is because the powers that be, the G7 or whatever you want to call them, excluding China and Russia, has decided to say, you know what, let us stick with this side of the divide and make these things work this way. So I'm not going to look at it from the standpoint of, sports and politics, war in sports. No, I'm going to look at it from the standpoint of a very selfish group of leaders who has decided to say that, you know what, the only way we can deal with this issue on ground is to use this thing called sports to nullify and dismantle most of the key men to the leader of this country called Russia. I'm not a fan of Putin, but what is fair is fair. We have an SAN here. He will tell you that until, even if you're seen to have killed someone, until the court agrees that you are a murderer, you are innocent until found guilty. Putin, as it were, has his reasons why he's going to war with a nation that he gave birth to called Ukraine. If sports were to be what we know or we grew up to assume sport was, what sport should have done at this point in time was to ensure that it uses its tool, which is the sports itself, to bring Ukraine and Russia to the table. What is wrong in this time? What is wrong in this time for these countries to meet the FIFA president and say, you know what, we know the impact of football in the world. Call the Olympic president, Jack Rock, or whatever his name is called, and say, we know the impact of sports in this world. Let us organize a mini Olympics or a mini World Cup at this time. Let Russia and Ukraine come to the table and play friendly. Let us see how this war can end. No, it won't happen. We heard that in Nigeria during the Civil War, Pelé came. And the Biafrans dropped their arms. Nigerian army dropped their arms. Everybody went to the stadium to watch the match. What is wrong in FIFA doing that? What is wrong in the Olympic Committee doing that? How come they are fueling it? I mean, for me, I just think Committee of Friends are trying to make back money that they lost during COVID. That's why we're buying diesel now for almost 700 naira per liter. So I'm seeing it from that business angle, and I believe that it has a key role to play, because I don't know why seizing the assets of Roman Abramovich and declaring Chelsea not to exist, sacking all their workforce, has anything to do with the war in Russia and Ukraine. What did those workers at the Stamford Bridge, what have they done concerning the war concerning Russia and Ukraine? What is their offense? That a man who works in a hotel that belongs to Roman Abramovich comes to work this morning, and the time you are fired because the UK government has frozen the assets of this man. What crime did the players in Chelsea, Lukaku, Kante, Christensen, Rudiger, what crime did they commit that will make the UK government freeze everything concerning Chelsea, that from now on they are more like destitutes? What did they do? Are they the ones that made Putin go into Ukraine? Are they the ones that have said Ukraine should have this with Russia, that is making us to buy diesel at almost 700 naira per liter, and the dollar is now going haywire? I just think, for me, from my own point of view, and I end with this, it's a very silly issue, and sports has come to clearly show its hands that sports is not sports. It is being controlled by a few Committee of Friends. Thank you.
Well, Odome, thank you. I think rather than disagree with what the others are saying, you seemingly have agreed that sports is being hijacked, has been hijacked. And the SAN is agreement with you. I'd like to pose it to you now. The International Olympic Committee President Thomas Bach and all the other gurus of the sporting federations in the world could, if they so wish, really come to the party and try to see a more peaceful resolution of this particular issue. But let's take the legal way. That is where I was heading to, Court of Arbitration for Sport. It may not be composed of purely legal minds, but it's composed of people that are so well versed in international sports laws and so on and so forth. And we know that in the past, they have argued against the intervention of war in sports. How come they have allowed this seemingly to go on? Or you think when they want to apply this principle, they will rescind these decisions?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I think Onome honestly has captured it all. The Court of Arbitration itself for sports, as of today, how neutral do we even think it is? Will Russia, for instance, if Russia wants to go, either as an Olympic team, as an Olympic federation, Olympic committee, whether as its football federation, athletics federation, want to approach that, would they even be allowed to file their case in that court? Are we sure that court itself has not taken sides? Like assets of certain oligarchs, and today being frozen because they said they are suspected to have ties with Putin. Who has proven that? Which court has pronounced Usmanov? Which court has pronounced Abramovich as having ties? Is today what we are simply saying, if I'm friend with Abdurrahman ibn Mohammed, and if he gets into trouble, I must also be punished by extension. Because if Putin is friends with Abramovich, that is, if they are, so you must punish me. You must freeze my assets. Because Usmanov is a successful Russian businessman and made this money from Russia. What are they going to do to point cooperation to all others who also do business or did business with Russia? Are they going to sanction the rest of the world? Are we saying there are no big companies in Europe? Is there no Facebook in Russia? Are you going to sanction Zuckerberg because he does business in Russia? Are you going to sanction Microsoft? McDonald's? Are we going on and on? Or you have just picked these persons because they are Russians and they are supposedly friends with Putin. And wherever they are found, wherever they are found, even in sports, any sporting body associated with them must also be punished. Because that is what is happening today. That is why Chelsea is being punished today. Because it is associated with Abramovich, who is a friend of Putin. Let's even assume you want to use sports for diplomacy. Because that is the point Onome has made. We can use sports for diplomacy.
Thank you, SAN.
Okay.
The more questions you ask, the less answers you get. The more you look, apparently, the less you see. Now, I see Satish has made a point that the Ukrainians did say at some point in time that actually Abramovich was perhaps the only person who came to their aid when they sought help. And ironically now, the man and his businesses and his assets, are coming under the cosh. We'll come to Satish to explain further on that. But I want Mr. Speaker, Chief Segun Odegbami, to weigh in on this. Is there inequality in the way these issues are being, carried out?
Well, you see, the subject of sports needs closer and further examination and study. That's where all of this is going on. See the different expressions now, the different sentiments we have expressed. And a lot of people are saying, oh, take sports out of politics. But we have seen where sports mixing with politics has actually made the world a better place. It has helped to curb immorality, injustices, racism, and so on and so forth. That's sport at its power. When it does that, you do not condemn it. But in a case such as this, affecting a club, affecting some individuals, we are now condemning it. It requires closer study. That's why Nigeria has taken the lead in establishing a unit for sports and diplomacy so that that study can truly be conducted and will guide different governments, particularly Africa. We have been perennial, perpetual victims of all kinds of injustices in the world. And sport remains a power. That's what we have seen. It's a power that should be deployed. Now it's being deployed for good in certain areas, deployed for bad in certain other areas. Why not use it for good where it concerns Africa? Let me just end with this short story, which will shock the world. We have Chief Olusegun Obasanjo, who is a special envoy of the African Union to 10 countries in the Horn of Africa, where there's huge conflict going on. There's probably the biggest refugee crisis in the world going on there. Wars and crises are all going on there. Chief Obasanjo has been the special envoy trying to resolve those conflicts within the past couple of months. He told a gathering recently, just last week, that in all the time he has spent in this place trying to resolve crises with all the government, several Western governments have called him up to find out what is going on, what help they can render, what this they can do, just to make sure that they support that effort. He said not one African leader, not one, has spoken to him to even ask what is going on in 10 African countries where there's conflict such that is even worse than what is going on in Russia and Ukraine. And I just reminded, I said, look, this is where sport can come in. Sports can unify those people. You can bring competition into it. Beyond even competition, you can start exchange programs amongst the youth, reminding people of how beautiful this world is if there's no crisis. So sport has a big role to play in all aspects of life. It's in the economy, it's in the environment, it's in health, it's in infrastructural development, it's in everything. You cannot isolate it. So we need to study it and find out how it can be further deployed positive, particularly where it concerns Africa, where we are so disenfranchised, so disadvantaged in this world. We need to use sport in Africa to advance our cause. 1976 was a good example for us. We should never forget. We came together, used sport, and changed the dynamics of South Africa. We cannot say remove sports from politics. We have to manage it better. That's why that unit in the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs is so important. That's the study they are conducting.
I think, Mr. Speaker, the work for that unit at the National Institute, Nigerian Institute for International Affairs and NIS have got their work cut out for them, because apparently from the contributions of all speakers on the in the parliament today, it does appear that sports has been ill affected. Sports is being used rather negatively. And I want Satis to come in here because certainly a lot of inequality and perhaps maybe injustice may be too harsh a word, has been visited upon some of the victims of this, these issues, especially those of them that are seemingly innocent because precedents have been set. Let's hear from Satish.
The point I was making is this actually came from the Ukrainian side. A film producer, Ukrainian film producer, Alexander Rodnyansky, approached Abramovich asking him to intervene if he could to help with finding a peaceful solution to the crisis in Ukraine. So that was done by Ukrainians. And they are the ones who have said Abramovich responded to this. He tried to do things about it. He has now set up foundations to help the victims of the conflict on the Ukrainian side and to benefit them. So it's actually rather sad to see that by sanctioning Abramovich, you're actually hurting the very cause that you claim to be trying to help. He wants to sell Chelsea. He could have sold it at a massive profit. He could have kept the money. He could have kept the profits from it. But he's saying he's not going to do that. That he was actually going to use any profits from it to help the Ukrainian side. He's now been prevented from doing that. Chelsea has effectively been kicked out of football because of this crisis. What is that going to achieve? It's the most successful club. It is the world champion club. Should that have happened? In my opinion, no, it should not. But should sport be involved in politics? Absolutely, it should. It can be a force for change, but it has to be a force for positive change. It cannot be used and abused in the way I would say it has been here. And that's not to say Ukraine doesn't deserve and need help. Of course they do. Nobody wants to see a war. But let us look at this and say, in terms of what is happening throughout the world and what power sport can do. This is not going to change Putin's mind. Why would anybody think it's going to affect Putin? It doesn't affect him and his circle. It affects ordinary people. And let's remember, there were many, many courageous Russian people who opposed the war. They stood out, they risked arrest, they risked worse. Where's the support for them?
Okay, thank you, Satish, for that wonderful insight. I think we'll just go for our final break. When we come back, each one of us will have a minute to round up. Thank you very much. We have now come to the final part of this edition of the Sports Parliament for today. Let's start with Lande. Let's take what your own conclusions are from what we have all discussed.
I think it's very important to bear in mind that sport can be used for diplomacy, sport can be used to promote peace and togetherness, and there's very big power in sports. However, it has to be consistent, and what's happening right now, I think, sets a very bad precedent for what we hope that sport can actually achieve. I think it's almost a witch hunt, and I think it's not being done the right way.
Thank you very much, Lande. Waidi, what's your conclusion?
Yes, I think sports should be a medium to promote peace. It should add to the peace of the world instead of contributing to the conflict. The decisions of some sporting federations is not quite in order with what is happening. They are using personalities to come into play, so this should not be. Sports should be seen as a clean place, as a peace promoter, and then it should be used to promote such peace in a situation of war like this. They shouldn't be used to contribute to the existing blue group. I want to appeal to all the powers in the world to use sports to promote peace, not to actually cause more war.
Thank you, Waidi. Onome Obrute, the Maverick, what is your final take?
Mute.
You're muted.
Onome is not here.
I'm here. I was muted. I've unmuted it. Okay. My conclusion is the committee of friends, the powers that be, should go back to their dining table with their cup of coffee and add a slice of lime for taste and see that their ugly, selfish decisions is wrecking what we all love called sports. They should use it to do the right thing and not selfish interest, which is to boost their economies in a way by destroying what they think they are creating. Thank you.
Great, short and crisp. Now let's turn our attention to SAN, Babatunde Ogala. What is your conclusion, sir?
My conclusion is there's nothing to conclude. I just adopt. Why are you laughing like that?
There's nothing to conclude.
There's nothing to conclude. Let me
it's just a matter they really affect you, sir. Sorry.
Let me just adopt the brief of what every other person has said. Satish has covered the field. Lande has added spice to it. Waidekun has put some cream on it. And then Onome has added the sugar to make a mix. And I just adopt all the conclusions as mine.
The SAN has concurred.
Spoken.
Now, Satish certainly will have more than a few words to conclude, because you have raised some very, very salient issues that apparently have not been adhered to even by the international sporting federations. But by way of advice, if they were to be listening to you, what would you be telling them?
Well, I've already mentioned one, and I'm going to add to it the words of African and Egyptian great Mohammed Abu Trika. The decision to suspend Russian clubs and teams from all competitions must be accompanied by a ban on those affiliated with Israel, which has been killing children and women in Palestine for years. You are using double standards. I think that pretty much says it all, but I think we need to add to it. What about Yemen? What about Palestine? What about all the other areas that have been polluted by war and oppression? Why are these countries and these places and these people not being given the same support from sport? Sport has achieved great things. Africa is one of the places that it has done so. It tackled white supremacy and colonialism and one of the most vicious and evil systems of government that ever existed in apartheid. Sport played an important role in doing that and confronting it and overcoming it. So sport can and must play an important part in making the world a better place, but equally cannot be used and abused at will.
Thank you very much, Satish Seka, all the way from Wales. We enjoyed your contribution. Now let me turn my attention to Mr. Speaker. What have you been able to pick from all that has been said by Satish, SAN, Babatunde Ogala, Onome Obuthe, the Maverick, YD, and of course, Lande? What would be your conclusion based on what they have all stated?
These have been very valid contributions. They have made solid points that should actually go into proper documentation and examination. But I just want to draw our attention again that the most traumatized, the most victimized people in the world are us Africans and blacks. And Nelson Mandela said that sport has the power to change the world. And if the world is to change positively, Africa must be impacted, must be changed the most. So the power of sports should be deployed more to Africa. What is happening in Ukraine and Russia is child's play compared to what we have gone through for the past 500 years as Africans and blacks. So we need sport more than any other race in the world to help us shape our future. And that's why what we have started in Nigeria, that started in 1966 actually, during the World Cup that Nkrumah, withdrew Africans from participating. And what we have started in Nigeria, to sit down and have a conversation amongst ourselves and look at how we can harness the power of sport that exists. It exists. We must harness this power to protect our own interests as Africans because we are the most victimized peoples in the world. We must never forget. Leave the others for now. Look at ourselves first and save ourselves and change our world. So that's my own conclusion. So, and I know that I have the gavel here and time is up, but let me let you round up. Before
you hit the gavel, Mr. Speaker, I very much take what you have stated as a kind of a homily. Yes, Africans have suffered and we need more solutions. This is a call for all of us, all those who have the power, not to agree, not to allow the power of sports to be misused, as we are seeing on the European continent, because the Africans, we do need more peace. We do need to use the power of sports more positively. And so I take it that this speaker has moved a motion, and we will end this parliament sitting today in a very much unorthodox way. I am sitting in Jos as the acting speaker. Mr. Speaker, away in the UAE, I will call on him now to hit the gavel to end this edition of the program.
Thank you, Abdurrahman. You moved the motion. I didn't move the motion. You have moved the motion. And I ask all people from all over the world, particularly you, the parliamentarians that have participated today, to join hands with us to say aye. Don't say nay today. Let's all say aye, that we're in support of that motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it.